You know, one of the strangest things about being human is that we spend our entire lives trying to control something that was never under our control in the first place. And the more we try, the more entangled we become, like a man desperately trying to pull himself out of quicksand by clutching it with both hands. The harder he grips, the deeper he sinks. And yet, he believes that if he could just try a little harder, push a little more, grip a little tighter, he would somehow escape. But life, you see, is very much like that quicksand. Not because life wishes to swallow you, but because life simply does not respond to force. You cannot shove the wind, you cannot hurry the tides, and you cannot command the unfolding of existence with the stubbornness of your ego. When you attempt to do so, you don't gain control, you lose it. You do not liberate yourself. You imprison yourself within the exhausting illusion that you must manage the entire universe. And that, my friends, is the great misunderstanding of the human mind, the belief that control equals safety. But let me ask you something. Has control ever actually given you safety? Or has it only given you tension? Has it given you peace? Or has it given you worry? Has it brought you freedom? Or has it built a tighter and tighter cage around your spirit? You see, control is a curious thing. It promises security, but it delivers fear. For the moment you believe you control life, you also believe you are responsible for every possible misfortune. The moment you imagine the world depends on your vigilance, you can never rest, not for a moment. Because what if you loosen your grip and everything falls apart? That is the fear that keeps the ego awake at night. But the ego, you must understand, is itself a fiction. It is not a villain. It is not a demon. It is simply an idea, a fragile idea, that there is a little man inside your head who must keep everything together. And so long as you believe in that little man, you will treat life as though it were a machine that needs your constant supervision. But look at nature. Does it behave like a machine? Does a flower bloom because it forces itself to bloom? Does a river flow because it worries about where to go? Does a cloud form because it schedules its appearance on a calendar? Everything in nature happens without effort, without struggle, without fear. And yet, when you live aligned with nature, when you allow life to move through you as it moves through the trees, through the oceans, through all creatures, people say you are letting go. But what you are really doing is letting go of the unnecessary burden of being the one who must push the river. You cannot push the river. You can only float upon it. And floating, you see, is not passive, it is responsive, like a dancer responding to music, not by controlling the rhythm, but by feeling it. But we humans have forgotten how to feel life. We prefer to manage it, measure it, carve it into schedules and obligations. We prefer predictions over presence. We grasp for guarantees. We cling to expectations. And each expectation becomes another bar of the cage. Because the moment you expect life to behave a certain way, you become terrified that it might not. Imagine this. You walk to the ocean with a bucket. You believe that if you can scoop enough water into that bucket, you will possess the sea. But every time you scoop, the water slips between your fingers. So you scoop faster, you scoop harder, and soon you conclude that the sea is disobedient, chaotic, hostile. But the sea is merely being the sea. It is you who is insisting that the ocean fit inside your bucket. This is what happens when you try to control life. You are trying to carry the ocean in a container far too small. And the tragedy is not that the ocean refuses to fit, it is that you believe it should. Now, to see this clearly is the beginning of freedom. For once you recognize that you are trying to hold something inherently unholdable, you can finally release the strain, the tension, the effort. You can allow life to be what it already is. And in that allowing, you begin to feel the natural ease of existence, the very ease that children know before we teach them to tighten themselves with worry. Look at a child playing. They are not controlling life. They are living it. They are not planning their joy. They are discovering it moment by moment. They are not demanding guarantees. They are curious. And because they do not grip life, life does not grip them. But as we grow older, we become clever, too clever. We build elaborate systems of control, identities, reputations, routines, plans. And then we fear losing the very structures we created. So we defend them, we polish them, we cling to them. And the clinging becomes the prison. You cannot be free while protecting an identity. You cannot be open while demanding certainty. You cannot flow while insisting the river obey your instructions. And so the real question becomes, why do we attempt to control life in the first place? The answer is simple. We believe that without control, everything will fall apart. But look, everything falls together without your control. Your heart beats without your permission. Your breath flows without your management. Your thoughts arise without your intention. The planets spin without your supervision. The entire universe carries on without your involvement. And yet you worry that your life will collapse if you loosen your grip. This is the remarkable arrogance and insecurity of the human ego. It is both terrified and convinced it must be in charge. But the truth is, the moment you let go, truly let go, something beautiful happens. You do not fall, you float, you do not collapse, you expand. You do not lose your life. You regain your place within its natural rhythm. For life has never been the enemy. The only enemy is the illusion that you must fight it. And so, my friends, the invitation before you is simple. Stop grasping for control, and life will stop feeling like a struggle. Stop fighting the current, and you will discover the effortless movement of being. Stop imprisoning yourself with your expectations, and you will find that the world opens like a flower in the morning sun. You cannot control life without becoming its prisoner, but the moment you stop trying, you become its partner. Now let us look more carefully at this peculiar obsession with control, because it has shaped almost everything about the modern world. We have built entire civilizations upon the belief that life can be engineered like a bridge or managed like a corporation. We try to schedule our emotions, regulate our relationships, optimize our experiences. We treat the self as though it were a project, a thing to be perfected, and we treat living as though it were a task, a thing to be performed correctly. But life is not a project, and you, my dear friend, are not a machine. The more you treat yourself as one, the more alienated you become from your own existence. You become like a conductor who is desperately trying to control every instrument in the orchestra, but he himself has forgotten how to hear the music. And because he cannot hear it, he becomes anxious. Because he is anxious, he becomes tense. And because he is tense, he attempts even harder to control the entire symphony. But the more he controls, the worse the music becomes. This is the irony. Control is a reaction to fear, but control also generates the very fear you're trying to escape, a snake eating its own tail. And so, many people live in a permanent state of inner conflict, trying to control the very things that make them anxious, and then becoming anxious about their inability to control them. It is a loop, a cycle, a trap of one's own making. You wake up in the morning and you think, today I must be productive, successful, confident, calm. But these demands do not produce calmness. They produce anxiety. For whenever you must be something, you immediately fear not being it. You tell yourself you must be happy. This makes you afraid of sadness. You must be strong. This makes you afraid of weakness. You must be peaceful. This makes you afraid of disturbance. You must be in control. This makes you afraid of life. And in this way, your ideals become your chains. Now one might say, but surely we must have some control. Isn't control necessary? Isn't it responsible? Isn't it wise? And yes, of course, there is practical control. You steer a car, you prepare your meals, you open and close a door. This is not the kind of control that imprisons you. The control that imprisons is psychological. It is the belief that your inner world, your feelings, your future, your relationships, your fate, must obey your expectations. And it is this expectation, this insistence, that creates suffering. Not life itself, but your demand that life behave according to your script. Consider for a moment the waves of the ocean. They rise and fall with a kind of effortless intelligence. But imagine standing on the shore and shouting at the waves, "Be taller, be shorter, come faster, arrive slower." You would look absurd. But humans do this with life every single day. We shout at reality, "Give me success now. Take away this uncertainty. Do not change. Give me guarantees." And reality, like the waves, continues doing what it has always done, rising, falling, appearing, dissolving, completely unaffected by our commands. So the problem is not that life is uncontrollable. The problem is that we believe it should be controllable. But this belief is entirely an invention, an inheritance from a frightened ego that believes it stands separate from the world it inhabits. The ego says, I am me and life is out there. And because life appears out there, the ego feels threatened by it. And because it feels threatened, it seeks control. But the ego is mistaken. You are not separate from life. You are an expression of it. You do not live within the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself as a human for a brief moment. Just as a wave does not exist independently of the ocean, your existence is not independent of the vast cosmic process unfolding around you. Trying to control life is like a wave trying to control the sea. And once you see this, truly see it, you begin to loosen. Something softens inside you. The clenched fist of your personality begins to open. The tension in your chest begins to dissolve. Because now you understand that you were never the one steering the great unfolding of existence. You were simply participating in it, like a leaf dancing in the wind, believing that it must direct the wind itself. Some people find this realization frightening. They say, if I am not in control, then who am I? What happens to my plans, my goals, my agenda? But I would ask you, what has your agenda ever given you except anxiety? What have your rigid plans ever offered except disappointment? What has your attempt to grasp certainty ever produced except fear? The universe is infinitely wiser than your expectations. It moves in ways you cannot predict because it is far too vast, too interconnected, too mysterious for the limited mind to fully grasp. And yet, instead of trusting this intelligence, we insist on micromanaging it. We act like a child sitting in the passenger seat, grabbing the toy steering wheel and believing we are driving the car. Your sense of control is a toy steering wheel. It gives the illusion of influence, but the car moves by its own power. And in this realization lies the beginning of a profound shift, a shift from effort to ease, from tension to trust, from fear to flow. Because once you stop fighting life, you begin to cooperate with it. You listen, you respond, you dance, you adapt. And life begins to feel less like a battlefield and more like a conversation. Not a conversation you must dominate, but one you participate in gracefully. Now you may wonder, if I let go of control, won't I become passive? Won't I accomplish nothing? But this is a misunderstanding. Letting go does not mean apathy. It means clarity. When the mind is not clouded by fear and desperation for control, action becomes spontaneous, effortless, appropriate. Just like a skilled martial artist moves not from force, but from fluidity. In Zen, they say, when you stop trying to control, you act with perfect skill. Because skillful action arises not from tension, but from presence. And presence, my friends, is only possible when control is relinquished. For control belongs to the past and the future. Presence belongs to now. And now is the only place where life can actually be lived. And so we arrive gently at the end of this exploration, not an end in the sense of a destination reached, but in the sense of a exhale long held, a soft settling of the heart. Because what we have been speaking about is not a technique, not a method, not a rule to follow. It is an invitation, a permission, a remembering. Throughout your life, you have been taught that freedom means mastery, that peace means dominance, that security means control. And yet, all the while, something deep within you has been asking a quieter question. What if I don't have to hold everything together? What if life already knows what to do? You see, the more tightly you hold your internal world, the more fragile it becomes. The more desperately you try to secure your future, the more anxious it feels. The more you try to dictate the path, the more you fear stepping off it. But when you loosen your grip, even slightly, something remarkable happens. Life begins to move again. Just as a clenched hand cannot receive, a rigid mind cannot perceive. To control is to close. To let go is to open. And it is only in openness that anything new can arrive. So let us imagine for a moment that you are standing on a cliff overlooking the sea. The wind brushes your face. The horizon stretches endlessly, and the waves crash below in rhythms millions of years old. Now ask yourself sincerely, do these waves need your permission to rise and fall? Does the sky need your guidance to change its colors? Does your heart need your command to beat? You live within a mystery so immense, so beautifully orchestrated, that the idea of controlling it is almost comic. And yet the ego takes itself so seriously, as though the universe awaits its approval. But consider this, every moment of your life that has truly transformed you, truly awakened you, came not from control but from surrender. Every moment of insight, every burst of love, every unexpected shift in direction came from the places you could not plan. Your greatest realizations were accidents. Your most important relationships were surprises. Your turning points were uninvited. Your deepest wisdom emerged from moments you could not predict. And so life whispers, let me move you. Because life has always been moving you. The river has been carrying you from the moment you were born. The struggle was never to swim. It was resisting the current. Letting go does not mean drifting without direction. It means allowing direction to arise naturally. It means noticing where the current pulls and where your own being feels guided, without the constant interference of fear. Fear is the architect of control. Trust is the architect of freedom. And trust is not blind. Trust is intimate. Trust is experiential. Trust emerges when you finally see that the things you clung to were never holding you up. Control does not keep you safe. It keeps you tense. Control does not give you clarity. It gives you exhaustion. Control does not protect you from life. It protects you from living. So what happens when you stop controlling? You begin to participate. You begin to experience life directly instead of through the narrow tunnel of your expectations. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to feel lighter, gentler, more attuned to the subtle currents moving through your existence. And then something subtle shifts in your perception. You start to recognize that life is not happening to you, but as you. You are not separate from the flow, but a movement within it. You are not a figure standing outside the world trying to manage it. You are the world expressing itself in the form called you. And when this finally dawns on you, there is no longer any need to control. For what would you be controlling? Yourself? Life? The same thing. You cannot control life without imprisoning yourself, because you and life are inseparable. To resist life is to resist your own being. To trust life is to trust yourself. And so, the invitation, as we drift toward the final words of this meditation, is simple but not easy. Relax. Breathe. Let life breathe you. Stop trying to force the river to flow straighter. Stop trying to turn waves into rectangles. Stop demanding certainty from a universe built entirely on change. Instead, step into the dance, the one that has been happening with or without your permission, the one that carries galaxies across the void and carries thoughts across your mind, the one that existed before you were born and will continue long after you have dissolved into the same mystery from which you came. To let go is not to lose control. It is to realize you never had it. And in that realization, that one simple, profound shift, the cage opens, the tension unwinds, the heart becomes spacious, the mind becomes clear, and life, in all its unpredictability and wonder, becomes not an enemy to conquer, but a companion to explore. So when you find yourself struggling, commanding, resisting, tightening, pause. Remember the ocean. Remember the wind. Remember the pulse in your chest that beats without your permission. And remember this, you cannot control life without becoming its prisoner. But when you stop controlling, even for a moment, you discover that the door to your freedom has been open all along.